Wrapping up hour one of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. Caleb almost got caught there, didn't you?
Now my mic's off, though.
Well, he turned it off on purpose. Implicit Bias, wrapping up hour one. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. That's the Rustic Renegade. We're in the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair located somewhere in downtown Lafayette. And let me tell you, if you missed any part of the show, find us on our socials. Find us on X, find us on YouTube, find us on Facebook. Find us wherever, and we're there. Find us wherever you get podcasts, because you can catch the first 3 segments or segments that you've missed or episodes that you've missed of your favorite crew, and that's crew with a K, sitting around solving the problems of the world one weekly whiskey at a time. And by the way, if your affiliate only gets hour one of Implicit Bias, you might want to find us on our socials as well, because hour 2, as we say, is always more fun.
And you know what? Find those affiliates on their socials and let them know that you want hour 2.
That's a great call out. Yeah. Let them know your implicit bias, because that way you might actually get what you're asking for. Speaking of getting what we're asking for, we were talking about why Matt Gaetz, people might have been upset about him potentially being the attorney general. He has now withdrawn his name officially. But the question was, why were all the stops pulled out? Why did they dive into multi-year-old allegations that the Department of Justice didn't want to prosecute? All that stuff. Why?
Simple.
Simple. Why is it simple?
Because that's what they do.
It is.
The only way. Do you realize that every Republican presidential candidate has been called Hitler?
This is true.
Going back to Eisenhower, who destroyed Hitler.
Really? I didn't realize
Yes,
that.
every single one of them has been called Hitler by the left, starting with Ike.
You mean that they used the same propaganda that Hitler used and they said it was Hitler?
Against the guy who destroyed Hitler.
Yeah. I tell you what, one of the reasons I think that they might have been upset is because they thought he might have looked into things like the recent audit of the U.S. Department of Defense. And if he looked into it, he might have held people accountable. So let's talk about that audit. And please, don't believe us. Please do not believe us when it comes to this audit. Please go look this up, because this is one of those stories that, with our current potato in chief authorizing U.S. weapons to be fired into Russia from a foreign country and basically trying to stoke the flames of World War III, this story is going to get swept under the rug. Don't look here. And it's this. It's that the Department of Defense has failed yet another financial audit. And when I mean failed yet another, I mean not like their second one in 2 years, not like their third one in 3 years, not like their fourth one. I'm talking like their 7th, 8th. Caleb, has the Department of Defense ever really passed an audit and balanced the books?
It's never really balanced. Like,
Fair.
there's going to be a margin for error that's acceptable with it, right? Because there are things that our government spends money on that we don't know about and that can't be tracked.
So what would you say, 3 to 5%? I mean, which when you're starting to talk about these numbers, that's a really big dollar amount, but it's a small percentage.
I would anticipate realistically seeing something along the lines of probably $110 million.
As opposed to hundreds of billions of dollars or trillions of dollars?
Yeah, like, 2 or 3 18-wheelers worth of cash. You can lose that. It happens all the time. Like, look, it happened to the government of Iraq when I almost said when we invaded.
Well, I was going to say it kind of happened when they ended up with pallets of cash on the tarmac in Iran, right?
Yeah.
I mean, talking $400 million.
Or when a plane gets sent somewhere, maybe to like someone in Russia, and then that person dies in a plane crash, and we lost that money. We don't know where it went. All that's part of the same budget.
Incidentals.
Yeah.
Wait. Say that again, Chris?
Incidentals.
Incidentals. Wow. Yeah, I mean, when you start thinking hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, I'm talking hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's more than just a couple of 18-wheelers worth of cash.
Yeah.
We're talking skyscrapers almost full of cash, depending upon the bill that you're using when we think about this. This money literally turned into Kaiser Soze. They went, what? it was gone. And you have to wonder, well, if that money's gone, where did it go?
Well, and when you reach a certain level in government, and the military is an arm of the government, at some point, the checker, I used to hear the term, the checker checks, the doer does. What happens if you're the checker?
Nobody's there to check you.
So at that point in time, a lot of people just think, what else can I get away with?
See, I was thinking that it was more like what we used to see as a kid, except it was a dollar bill, not a bill, and going to Congress. I'm just a bill, cause I'm only a bill, and it had two legs and like hundreds of millions of them,
Yeah,
or hundreds
just
of billions that
walked
just
away.
walked away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Danny, you wanted to chime in?
I was just wondering if the checker doesn't do whatever, do they become the exchequer?
Not really.
Well, and that's the problem. Okay, so
Yeah,
that
no.
gets us into Doge.
They get a promotion.
Usually.
They get a promotion. That's what we see in the
Good
government,
old
right?
Peter
If you,
principle.
yeah, if you suck at your job and you suck at it long enough, we'll promote you to put you somewhere else. That way, so you're someone else's problem, but we'll pay you more money in the process.
Right, the Peter principle.
Yeah.
Everybody gets promoted to their highest level of incompetence.
Yep. Chris, you wanted to chime in?
No, I was just gonna say, if you're the checker and you keep quiet, nobody's looking, nobody's asking, and it keeps on rolling.
And I mean, what are they going to do to you at that point? Yeah, okay, we failed our 7th audit. Guys, we have to improve. We have to be more accountable. And look, things are going to be field lost. I've seen entire Humvees be a field loss. Field loss being something happens and you're like, can't fix that. So you're like, oh, well, there's $145 million or $145,000 gone.
Think about an M1 Abrams, right? Or think
Yeah.
about a U.S. tank that gets damaged on the battlefield.
Yeah.
We have to blow that up because we don't want to
destroy
leave it, or
but
we
then
should.
There's documentation that goes with that, though, right? You have forms that
Yeah.
you're supposed to fill out as a
Allegedly.
soldier to fill it out and track that. But that's not always the case. And there are certain things, like when I was in, if you lost your whoopee, oh, it was horrible. But if you lost your whoopee, which is your little blanket, you could field loss it, and supply would issue another one if you had a really good supply guy. And there were certain things that were acceptable to loss, and you would get them replaced. But then there are certain things that are not. And when you get to this dollar amount, that's a lot of not.
Right. What is that, Kavan? Do you know the period of time that we're talking about that they've been behind in this,
So-
or at least they can't fill?
So here's what I will say. I saw
Explain
something
the
that said they have not passed an audit for the last 7 years. But here's what I do know. What I do know is I'm going to go back to 2001 and September of 2001. There was a very interesting, very specific day that Donald Rumsfeld actually held the press conference and came out and said, there are trillions of dollars that we cannot account for and we are going to find. Please don't believe me. Go look this up. Donald Rumsfeld, trillions of dollars can't be found, U.S. Department of Defense. And it just so happened that something happened the very next day that, number one, would take our attention completely away from it. Number two, allegedly, and I say allegedly, I'm not there. I don't know for a fact. It has been reported, so we're going to say allegedly, would destroy all of those documents. What happened in September of 2001 that would have destroyed documents and things of that nature in the Department of Defense? Anybody have an idea?
The
'Cause-
attack on the Pentagon, September 11th.
September 11th. Donald Rumsfeld held the press conference on September 10th. September 11th happens the next day. I'm not saying. It is just an awful coincidence that the very next day we have those attacks, and all of a sudden Donald Rumsfeld is not focused on the $2 trillion hole that he allegedly found in the Department of Defense. He is now focused on actually defending the country again
So
based upon those attacks.
I just got an alert. Right,
Uh-oh.
right.
Uh-oh.
I am proud to announce the former Attorney General of the great state of Florida, Pam Bondi, as our next Attorney General of the United States of America.
Oh.
I don't know anything about her.
Well, I'm going to tell you the first thought that comes to mind, but Danny, go ahead. I saw you leaning in.
I had heard her name even before before Matt Gaetz was named, that she was on the short list.
So what has Bondi done Who has she gone after?
It says here she was a prosecutor for nearly 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
made the streets of Florida safe for Floridians. Florida's first attorney general. She helped curb deadly drugs, drug trafficking, fentanyl overdose deaths.
I'm going to tell you what her office had to be in charge of that makes me go, oh, get me the popcorn. Get me the popcorn. Florida had a major confrontation legally with one of the largest corporations in the world. Anybody remember what company that was? Danny knows.
Disney?
Ring the bell. She went after Disney for everything that they were doing, and she made Disney bend the knee.
Yes.
She won.
I think this may be the replacement that they wish they'd left Matt Gaetz in place over.
And here's the funny part. What state is Matt Gaetz from? And I just gave it away. He's from Florida. You think that she's not going to work, and I use this in the monologue, in concert with Matt Gaetz to go after the exact same thing? So in my opinion, you almost get Matt Gaetz by proxy.
And I think she's going to fly so under the radar for a while that they're not going to be able to find anything on her to try and pull a Gaetz.
Well, here's the deal. You've already used all your political capital on Gaetz.
right.
And now, what do you have to go after Pam Bondi? Wait, she actually went after Disney and won as she was instructed by the voters in her state. Wait, she did her job? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Now we're starting to get to that conversation where you've got somebody in place who is going to be a lot more difficult, hopefully, a lot more difficult to go after and get out than Matt Gaetz was. Wow. I got the double finger that time. I got the finger from Tug and from Caleb.
I
Not
got to do it. I got to do it.
Not that finger. It's the 1 minute finger, which means hour one of Implicit Bias is coming to a close. A sad, soft ending. But what that means is that hour two is rolling in with more weekly whiskeys, more problems of the world, and more of your Implicit Bias. Cheers.